Hey, Dustin, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian, great to be here. First off, just appreciate everything you're doing with your podcast, LinkedIn. Officially, I guess, sort of a graduate of two of your programs, so excited to be here. Well, my name's Dustin Harper. I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio, and then a lot of my family's from Georgia, so I ended up moving to Georgia for school. Went to the University of Georgia, have to throw in a Go Dogs because we won the national championship after 40 years. And then from there, went straight into sales. So I was with Milwaukee Tool and their parent company for almost 9 years right out of school. Had a great run in power tool sales. And then a little less than 3 years ago, decided to change industries. Actually went to med device. So I've been doing that for the last few years and I've had a great experience there so far.
And why sales for you?
Yeah, so thinking about that, going back to when I graduated high school, I was looking for a job during the summer before I went to school, and I found something in the newspaper ad. Definitely dating myself a little bit because I said newspaper ad, but it was kind of mysterious. I didn't really know what it was. Ended up going there, and it was sort of like a group interview session, but it was for Cutco, right? And I didn't know until I got there. So I think growing up, I was actually a little introverted in some group settings, but in that situation, for whatever reason, I kind of just flipped the switch and I did well and ended up doing Cutco that summer. Did really well. Thank you to all my friends from football and wrestling parents who helped me do well. They still have the knives now though, so that's a good thing about it. But that was my first kind of experience with it. And then I think once I broke into Milwaukee and I got my first promotion, I had a lot of great mentors and great salespeople around me, and really just kind of took off from there. And at this point, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Was Cutco a positive experience for you?
I had a positive experience myself. I know there's probably varying opinions on that, but I did well for the summer. It kind of broke me out of my comfort zone. I mean, doing those presentations in front of people that you knew, because it was a lot of my friends' parents, and having to call them and ask for meetings. I mean, it was not an easy experience by any means, but it kind of helped me sort of get out of my comfort zone. And I ended up, moving to a different state for college. So I feel like it just kind of opened the network for me to try to do things different, I guess.
And did that excite you? Because do you have like that excitement gene, the adventure gene?
Yeah, I think so. I think I like to do things different. I like to kind of go against the status quo. I like to travel and do things of that nature. So you get that rush. Anytime I prepare for a presentation, I'm always nervous right before, but I think it's good to be a little bit nervous because you
Yeah.
care. And I think it just sort of opened that up for me. And I like the pressure. I might complain about it sometimes because I get a little tired, but I like having that pressure, and I think that fits well into sales.
And how long did it take before you became comfortable?
I would
Has that
say,
happened yet?
yeah, hopefully next week. But no, I think once I was able to move up the ladder a little bit, I was kind of like backwards, right? So my first 8 or 9 years, I was moving up pretty fast and going into leadership roles. So that kind of by nature, I was getting thrown into positions that I probably had no business or experience to be doing, but it was kind of a sink or swim mentality. And that sort of just opened it up for me. So I'd say, a few years in, I started to feel really comfortable. I also had a lot of great people early on, and where I'm at now, like great mentors, great other salespeople around me. At first, I got kind of put through the ringer. I was like the only associate rep in Florida, and I had to help out in, Miami. I had to help out in Jacksonville. I had to help out in all these different spots, and I got kind of ran around, but I was able to make it happen, and that probably impressed people, and it kind of helped me get opportunities in the future.
And other than kind of getting out of the comfort zone, what attracted you to sales? Was it the money? Was it the independence? Was it the challenge?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit of all of those, but I think it's that sort of salespreneur type mentality that I know you've mentioned in the past. You can kind of make it your own. You look at it as your own business. And I like that. I like having that freedom and flexibility. So that was definitely a big thing. I've always had a really good network of friends from all different areas and avenues. So I think I do truly enjoy being in front of people, helping solve their problems, make things happen for them. And I'm able to adapt and get along with a lot of different people pretty quickly. So I think that was just something that naturally made me kind of good at sales.
And Milwaukee Tool, was that kind of limiting, or you wanted to get into more of a business to business sale or an enterprise sale? What was the
Yeah,
reason?
yeah. Great question. Yeah, it's a great company, and I had an awesome experience there. I was able to do a lot of things that most people my age would not have been able to do, and get experience with Home Depot at a high level. Their corporate office. So I was in a role in my last few years there where I was basically in charge of a lot of some of the store side stuff with their 2,000 stores as well as .com, and I got a lot of exposure internally, right? So I would deal with product marketing, brand marketing, supply chain, kind of all those internal logistics, which are key for a big customer like that. But I realized that 80% plus of my time was doing that and not necessarily in front of the customer. And I think what I was best at was being in front of the customer, helping them solve the problems. And I just kind of gotten away from that. And honestly, I hit a little bit of a plateau. I was moving up really fast, and I wanted to get to that next step, and wasn't going as fast as I would have liked. And there were some reasons and things I needed to work on, but it kind of, in a weird way, was a blessing in disguise, because I kind of got opened up to a whole nother industry in med device. And, it's more kind of commission focused, not as structured like that. So, but I think the individual contributor, at least for now, is something that I really enjoy, because I can kind of make it my own. And there's certainly risks there, right, with commission, but I like what I'm doing now.
And how was the adjustment going from, tangible things, power tools, you probably could use them yourself, to stuff like med device, which I don't know, did you have any background there, any domain experience?
Yeah, you see, there is a connection. So my dad is a doctor and has his own practice, been in medicine for 40 plus years. My mom actually works at a hospital, and she's like a department administrator. So it was like, growing up, the more I look back now, it was maybe meant to be a little bit for me to get into healthcare. But other than that, I really didn't have a ton of experience. But I think where I'm at now has a ton of great training and resources. Actually, one of the people that kind of helped me get in, I worked with him back in the power tool days. So it came full circle 10 years later. So never burn bridges, for sure, because you never know how things will turn out. So I had a lot of great resources starting out. And then honestly, the pandemic happened, which kind of just put things to a halt, and it made it one of the more challenging environments we've ever seen, probably. But in a weird way, that made me get better at sales. It made me kind of study the craft more. I had to be a lot more creative and kind of innovative with what I was doing. So I kind of look at the silver lining side of that, and have been able to kind of come through and be pretty successful. So,
And how did you learn, kind of, or become good at that sale? I mean, because the timing was terrible, right? It was like right before COVID. And I got to believe you're new, so you don't have the relationships yet. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. I'll admit, I was probably maybe a little overconfident going into it, just because I had a lot of success, and I thought, I could navigate some of this stuff. But hospitals are super complex to begin with. A lot of silos. There are a lot of people involved. Most of these big systems have 25,000 plus employees, so not easy. So I think, well, not to give you too much credit, but I did do your course, right? So that was something that
you can give me too much credit.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Just wanted to make sure. So I think doing stuff like that, I mean, I certainly take advantage of all the internal resources I have, which are great. And I have a lot of awesome teammates that help me and are good at other things that is beneficial. But I think getting other perspectives sometimes is a good thing. And you kind of open the door for me, quite frankly, to just look at more mentors and coaches in general. So ever since I did your course, I've kind of expanded on that. I did a personal branding thing. I'm doing a passive income type thing. So I think coaching has really helped me, and trying to look at it like, always, how can I get better, not get too overconfident? Like, what can I tweak? What can I work on to kind of take it to the next level? So.
And how'd you do there? Or how are you doing there?
Yeah, no, it's still going really well. I mean, I was able to do well above kind of quota my first 2 full years, so I'm definitely proud of that in a challenging environment. And I'm going into my kind of my 3rd full year, basically, which traditionally I think is a kind of a breakout year typically. So looking forward to the future, and I've been, I guess, fortunate to have a lot of things work out, but definitely not easy. I think sometimes people think med device is very glamorous. There's certainly a lot of perks to it, for sure, and it's a great place to be. It's really hard to get in to med device, but you have to work some weird hours sometimes. If you're doing the OR stuff, you have to be tied down to cases and when those happen. So not always as glamorous, but you are helping people. I think that's the big thing, is you're helping patients, you're helping nurses. In my case, that's sort of what I focus on, and that's what I've become passionate with. So, luckily it's been going well.
And did your parents want you to get into healthcare? I mean, was that something that you were exposed to? It's kind of natural, right? When you grow up, both parents are in an industry. There's the osmosis. That's what they talk about. That's what their friends do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a little bit. I think pharmacy school was something that my parents might have wanted me to look at one point during college. And, I didn't have a super big passion for it in the college days or high school. I think it just over time, maybe I turned more and more into my parents over time. But yeah, no, not at first. They did a little bit. They were trying to, I think, get me to do like pharmacy school and things of that nature, but I wasn't really gravitating towards it. And then it just kind of, like I said, you never know how things are going to work out. So I ended up kind of hitting almost that 10-year mark where I was like looking for a change. And one thing led to another. One of my good friends and mentors was working in med device, and I had worked with him 10 years prior. So it just all kind of worked out. And then now I'm definitely see myself in healthcare and med device for the foreseeable future for sure.
And what's the sale like? Is it hyper competitive? Is it service oriented? Is it technology oriented? How would you characterize it?
Yeah, so there's the thing about med device I don't think people quite grasp is like there's so many different specialties that you can be in. So you have the OR surgeon focus where you're, in cases and surgeries. You have the capital equipment like, bed stretchers. You have what I do is more disposable, like stuff that gets used every day. And then you have pharma, biologics. So it really does vary by all those areas. And I'm not an expert on all those by any means, but I think, what I do now is very focused on the hospitals and hospital systems. So there's definitely two sides to it. There's a clinical side. Of course, clinical or technical stuff is very, very important because you're dealing with patients and things of that nature. So you have to be really spot on with the technical side of it and get that support from clinical folks. But then there's also a big kind of supply chain business side of it, because all these decisions, if they're using it across the system, I mean, it can add up in value. So there's a lot of committees involved. There's a lot of different parts. There's not just one champion that you're relying on because there's so many different people involved. So there's certainly a business side of it. There's a clinical side. Most stuff probably takes at least 6 months, if not longer. So I definitely characterize it as pretty complex. And then what I do, you typically have to do trials, evaluations. So there's a whole kind of process from start to finish that it's not easy at first. I had some experience with Home Depot that helped me because they're not, they're monsters. So that probably was beneficial to me. But I think some people don't probably recognize how long or how complex healthcare can be, especially since the pandemic. So,
and how did you learn all about it? Because it's a whole different vocabulary than power tools and retail, right?
Yeah.
And they speak their own language, and I'm sure they're not the most patient people in the world.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think luckily I have my parents who I can always bounce stuff off. So that's like a cool thing. And I probably just picked up stuff growing up that I didn't even really realize. So that's one thing. I think I've also tried to just delve myself in the industry. So I mentioned a little bit about the nursing stuff, and I really I've become passionate about the nursing side of it. So I try to get involved with a lot of different associations and different things locally that are focused on, nursing or healthcare, to be kind of more of, I'm not trying to be a subject matter expert or anything, but just like passionate about what they care about, their problems, and really kind of get myself ingrained in that whole terminology. So that was a big thing I did. And I think, again, giving you props one more time, this is going to be the last one, but your course kind of helped me a little bit with just sort of navigating that complex sales cycle and really making it about them. I mean, at the end of the day, especially with healthcare, you want to be helping the nurse, you want to be helping the patient, helping the surgeon. So if you make it about them and really care about what their big problems are, what they're trying to solve, I think, you can probably be fairly successful. So.
And where did you get this coachability mindset? Because, there's a ton of people in the course, but you were definitely one of the people that sought out feedback more than most.
Yeah, I don't think it was always like that. I think a little combative, or didn't want to hear some of that truth. So I think it was like a over time I got better and better about it, and not taking it personally. And I think you want to be competitive in sales, right? But you don't want to constantly be comparing yourself to others. And I had a point where I was like, not getting that next promotion. And I was like worried about what other people were doing. But, I think everybody can do well and you should be happy for everybody. And I think just over time, by some mistakes I made or, things I didn't accomplish, I kind of just had a different perspective. And then the pandemic, silver lining again, is like, I think I just had to kind of reinvent myself a little bit just because there was a lot of headwinds, I guess you could say, in healthcare. So that made me more coachable to just like looking at things from a different perspective. And then there's some mindset stuff too. I know we've talked a little bit about mindset in the past, but that's something too I've worked on as well.
And to talk about that, how did you, because you went from being kind of the superstar at one company to kind of being the new guy at another company at the worst possible time, right?
Yeah, you keep bringing that up, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that must have been overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I think it was definitely. So I think I mentioned earlier, like I think I've always been confident in my abilities, and I think you need to be to do well in sales. But there's probably times where maybe I was a little overconfident, so that can be humbling. That transition in general. So I think that kind of opened my eyes up, and I've always been willing to do the work. So I said before, like it's not always the most glamorous, but I didn't have an issue with like my title changing or being an individual contributor. I kind of looked at it as like a long-term play. I think I'm pretty strategic in general, so I'm not looking at short-term stuff. I'm looking at like 2, 3, 5 years down the road and how this could potentially be. But yeah, I mean, there was times where it was tough. I'll be honest, but I think luckily I have great resources where I'm at, and they've treated me really well, and a lot of really smart people I can work with where I'm at now.
And how about as far as getting better? Did you have a particular system that I know you've adopted like a morning routine, and you travel a lot too, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's been hit or miss just with all those restrictions and whatnot. But yeah, I'd say the morning routine was a big thing. So I started doing some kind of more LinkedIn focused stuff, and there was someone I worked with named Samuel that helped me with that. But his whole thing was like, in order to start doing LinkedIn stuff, you need to be more comfortable with yourself, because the biggest hurdle is that you don't want to post anything because you're worried about what other people are thinking. You're constantly like second guessing all these different things. So doing a mindset type of thing helped that LinkedIn stuff, but it ended up helping me in a lot of different areas. So basically I just do a morning routine every day. I try to be at least, 6 out of 7 days, look at things I'm grateful for, write out my quick goals for the year, do some empowering statements, but it just starts the day off on just such a positive light. And I realized kind of working on stuff like that, even though it wasn't necessarily business oriented, it helped me with like other areas like sales, and like going into a hospital where it's going to be maybe a tough environment because there's some negative things going on sometimes, like having that positive mindset and being a positive influence on nurses and different people that I work with. So but you have to constantly work at it. I mean, I'm still not perfect, and you have your bad days, but I think if you're trying to improve it, and if you're more aware of it, like you'll end up getting better over time. So
Because you have to have that positive mindset, because you're going into what could be like the water cooler environments, everyone complaining about everything not working, and you're the one there trying to get stuff to work.
yeah, no, it's tough. It can be tough. So you have to like literally before I go into a hospital, I'll just remind myself like, hey, I'm here to be a positive influence. Some people might be having a bad day. There's a lot of challenge staffing right now, especially with nursing. So like, how can I just be a positive influence and distraction? I'm going to help 25 nurses today, whatever it is. So I remind myself constantly, and I look at it from their perspective. Like, hey, if they're having a bad day, but then they get to see a medical device person that's trying to help them with a new product, that could, make their shift or whatever. They're having a bad shift, and maybe they're in a better mood after that. So I try to look at that. That's small stuff. And then over time, we can implement new things that help them, make their life easier. That's what I look at as well.
And you also have this kind of mindset of personal responsibility. as opposed to the blame game, right? Which is that defensive, irresponsible personality. And that person never does well in sales. You have to own it. You have to control the things you control and focus on those. Where did that come from? Was that from your parents? Was that from college? Was that from selling tools?
Yeah, I think that also was like a build up over time because I don't think I was perfect with that at first either. I think I probably had my moments where I wouldn't take all the responsibility that I should have. And again, over the last several years, I've become a lot more aware of it. And so that was kind of a build up over time. And I think my parents for sure helped with that. But early in my career, I probably might have blamed others more than I probably should have. And I've gotten better with that. And plus, when you're in an individual contributor role, I mean, you really can't blame other people, right? For the most part, there's some environment stuff that can probably come up, but I think you're never going to get anywhere if you're blaming other people. You don't want to have that pessimistic kind of reputation. So it wasn't perfect at first, that's for sure, but I've gotten much better, and I think the mindset stuff plays into that too, honestly.
Well, that's it, because it's either an upward spiral or a downward spiral. And if you start blaming the territory, the product, the economy, the pandemic, anything that you can't control, you just keep doing it and feeling more and more comfortable, but you're less and less empowered.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you,
And you're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to get stressed out. You're going to get burnt out. I mean, yeah, there was plenty of times since I switched that I could have blamed a lot of stuff. And I'm sure there was times where I was feeling sorry for myself for sure, but like, that's just not going to get you anywhere. So I think if you're going to be successful in sales, you got to be accountable. You don't need someone over your back telling you what to do. You got to, if you don't have that kind of framework to try to do things on your own and improve it, then you're probably going to struggle, especially in med device, because right now it's not the easiest environment. So you got to have that type of behavior if you want to be successful.
and what do you wish you knew that first year in sales that you now know that would have saved you an enormous amount of time?
Yeah, I think it's that classic talking about yourself too much, talking about the company, talking about the products, that type of thing, versus making it about them and what they care about, etc. So if you have a 30-minute meeting, they should be talking 23 minutes of it, right? So, but early on, when you're excited, you're kind of run around, don't have as much structure, you end up just talking about yourself. And of course, like, you want people to like you, that's going to be beneficial most of the time, but it really is about them and their problems and really trying to listen. But I certainly wasn't great at that at first. But over time, you get better. And there's very few examples where I think you can just talk about the product or the company and be successful. Maybe once in a decade there's a product like that, but otherwise you gotta make it about them.
That's it, because who do they care about?
Themselves, most likely.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you've also been pretty proactive about keeping track of your success and your progress.
Yeah, trying to like map stuff out and have it written down. I think at certain times I had a lot of good things I was doing well, but I wasn't necessarily keeping track of everything. I wasn't writing, like, mapping out these deals and whatnot. So over time, I just kind of look at it before and after of like, what are the commonalities of successful deals? What are the commonalities of deals that you lost, and trying to figure out what those major takeaways are and not to repeat them over and over again. So maybe relying on one person too much, that might have worked 5-6 years ago, but in today's healthcare environment, you need like a massive team of people. So realizing that like, hey, it's not just one person. You probably need to have multiple champions to really get something to the finish line. But really, before and after, post-mortem type stuff, I try to do, but could probably improve a little bit too.
And what other parts of your life are you trying to develop now? Because you've been working pretty hard the last couple of years. You're trying to round out your life a little bit more? Because when you travel a lot, it turns into your full life, right? You don't have much other time.
Yeah, I think I've always been good at the work side of stuff, or the business side of stuff. So I was too heavily weighted on the work stuff, right? So I needed to focus on other things like health. I've always been good about working out, but like eating a little bit healthy or something I'm doing this year. Personal and family stuff. So I've been more like evenly weighted in those other areas, which has really helped me, I think, with work too, because I'm not as stressed out. I'm more prioritizing stuff better. I used to be like, I still am sometimes, but like a yes person, like where I'm always saying yes and overcommitting myself. But like that just kind of wear you out over time. So if you have those like different categories that you're focused on, you can kind of map out like, what you say yes to, what you say no to. But I'd say like the health part, like trying to eat healthier in addition to working out, and then also that morning routine has just kind of helped with a lot of things.
Yeah, because what I noticed working with you is that your focus changed dramatically over that year. And you actually did much better working on fewer deals.
No, you're right. Yeah, less is more. Prioritize. It's so true, and it can be easy to get, especially if you have like a bigger territory. I don't necessarily have that, but like if you got a couple hundred accounts, I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed and try to do the same thing everywhere. But it's just not possible. So yeah, less is more. Taking a little bit more risk, but going deeper with those bigger accounts, like that's helped me quite a bit. And then eventually you hopefully become kind of part of the team, and one of them. If there's some hospitals I'm at so much, like they basically think I work there for the most part. So, that's I think the goal, but less is more was a big takeaway from your course. Definitely.
Cool. Hey, Dustin, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is my big thing. It's Dustin Harper, Duston Harper, and that's where I'm at.